Hi there, I'm Christine Zips, and we're continuing this series in conversation with the National Association for Children and Safe Technology. And with me today are co-founders Diane Hickey and Rachel Neumer. Our topic will be discussing our strategies comparing whether 100% wired is the best way to go when connecting to the internet, or is it good enough to just reduce the use of the technology when they're not using it? So let's get started with comparing these strategies and what are they and that have been suggested to reduce the exposure to microwave radiation in schools. What's best for our children?
Well, let's just start out with NACST's position on having 100% wired connections for the kids in any school, any of the school environments. And the reason for that is that they will not be exposed to a known biohazard, which is wireless radiation. And it will not compromise the health in that regard to any of the students or teachers. And it's what is safe for them. It can be labeled as safe. When we look at this, another philosophy is to go in and reduce exposures in schools. What that means is that children are still being exposed, as are teachers being exposed to the wireless radiation. And it would entail in each of the classrooms, the teacher going off and manually turning the router off and on as needed during the school day. It would also mean the kids turning off the wireless devices. And so there's that added complication. But even if we were to do that, there would still be exposure to wireless radiation. And no one can say that it's safe because it's not safe. There will still be harm, and there will still be exposure. So that's why we took the position that we did.
If I can interject that, I mean, you're so right. That is absolute fact, correct? That the fact that there is harm, it's been shown through thousands of peer-reviewed, published scientific studies that there is harm caused there, and we'll be including a link for more information on that. And also, I'd like to say it seems appropriate that Dr. Erica Mallery-Blythe has gone on record at talking about this topic. And she said, on surface, it sounds like a really good idea to reduce it when not in use. But she likened it to giving a child a low-tar cigarette, that it's not good enough, that, stronger measures needed to happen to protect them.
Now, some years ago, I put together this slide, which explained to people how to reduce their personal exposure. But I'll be honest, I think reducing exposure in all of these different ways is a nice idea. But when it comes to children, it's a bit like giving them a low-tar cigarette. I don't think it's legally defensible in terms of proper protection for a group which, by the way, are often not consenting and not benefiting. So, for that group, we should be looking at complete withdrawal of RF emissions and minimizing ELF emissions in the places they habituate, in schools, in public spaces, and helping and empowering parents to do this at home.
To date, are there any examples of legislation regulating wireless technology in schools that you'd like to chat about?
Yeah, we're aware of legislation. One example comes out of Massachusetts. I guess currently they have about 7 bills right now, pending bills. But the two in particular that we could discuss today are House Bill 1874 and House Bill 587. So anyway, they are promoting the idea or the concept of best practices, which refers to turning on and turning off the wireless devices when not in use.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't really support that sort of legislation because you're exposing children and teachers to a known biohazard. And of course, when you look at it within the context of what we've discussed in the other conversations that we've had about digital learning, they want a wireless infrastructure in the schools. They want the children to have access 24/7, anytime, anywhere. So if you've got all these classrooms filled with students and teachers that are expected, they're mandated to use these devices, and you're saying, oh, well, we'll just turn it on and turn it off, it's misleading and very dangerous to think that that would be acceptable. And very, it's, I think, really important for us to also recognize that in the first place, this sort of legislation acknowledges microwave radiation that's emitted from these devices as a known biohazard. They are saying that without reservation that they know that it is a known biohazard, but then they are turning around and saying that it is okay to expose the children and the teachers to this known biohazard if there's some educational need. And quite honestly, you could never justify exposing children or teachers to a known biohazard and say that there was an educational need to do that.
Good evening, everyone. Shelley McDonald, teacher at the high school. I'm here tonight, well, I'm sure you all know why I'm here tonight. I wanted to express my disappointment in the school committee and in the administration for failure to communicate, for failure to answer my questions. I've asked many questions, and these questions seem like something that should be easily and readily answered by anyone who made the decision to put the wireless radiation into the high school, into all of the schools, actually. Now, I understand that the routers are in. I've seen them. They're not on. There is wireless radiation in the high school right now. There's actually a wireless router right next to my room, and I measure readings in my room every day, and I can tell you that they're quite high. They're much higher than I'm comfortable with, and when I went into the classroom to measure the router that is functioning all day, every day, it's 48 times higher than when I was standing across Route 1 from the cell tower with the 4G microwave radiation antennas. I think that's much too high for a classroom. I'm not sure how it's responsible to keep something like that in there. We wouldn't have a cell tower on the premises, or I hope we wouldn't, so I'm not sure why we would put something so much more powerful in the classroom. Now, this week what I got in my mailbox was, I guess I'm a little bit nervous tonight, was something for concussion awareness for teachers. And I think that's important. It tells teachers how concussions could affect learning, the cognitive, emotional, physical things, sleep things that we can expect of our students and that parents and teachers should be looking for. I strongly urge this committee and this administration to do the same thing with wireless radiation, because parents need to know what to look for, teachers need to know what to look for. The cognitive and emotional and physical effects of concussions happen to be the same things that radiation sickness cause. Things from wireless routers, cell phones, cell antennas, things like that. Inability to concentrate, memory loss, difficulty handling stimulating classroom environments, irritability, headaches, dizziness, nausea, fatigue. There are others, but something like this could go a long way, and I would love the opportunity to make something like this up for the teachers, for the administration, and for the parents. And I'm not sure what's been going on in the way of parent communication and informed consent. As far as I can see, nothing, and I don't think anything has gone out to the teachers. I haven't seen anything. So I'm wondering when that's going to happen. I was so frustrated that I hadn't been getting my questions answered that I had to draft a Freedom of Information Act letter that I sent to Dr. Auger. So I'm hoping that that will get some of these questions answered, because there are things that We really need to know. The community needs to know, and we deserve to know. And that's all I have to say tonight. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mudge.
Thank you.
We've seen this in many places crop up. They're labeling this exposure to wireless radiation as best practices. And so anyone not having a background or understanding what the backstory is, or that it is a biohazard, to look at that and see it officially defined as what's best, you know, it's so misleading, really, and it's not honest at all. Yeah. Well, you know, like I said, anyone getting a hold of it, like the parent or the teacher or whatever, you know, once it's published and once it's or legislated or something, then it sends a message out to the public that, okay, you know, it's not that bad, this reduced, you know, radiation, it's not that bad. And that is not the truth at all. And in practice, the curriculum, which they want it 24/7 with these kids, runs totally counter to this idea of that it can be reduced to any, you know, any means. And then two is the definition of reduced. It's very individual. What difference does it make if my next exposure in the classroom is going to result in, you know, the tipping point for me becoming electrosensitive? I mean, what meaning is that? Or that it breaks my DNA and sets in motion diseases?
You get cancer.
You know, they have no idea how it's going to impact the particular biology of the individuals.
Wi-Fi, I think anyone who puts Wi-Fi into a school should be locked up for the rest of their life. I really do. I think they're not fit to walk on the surface of this planet because they haven't looked at the research, and whatever incentive they have, it is not worth the genetic problems that parents are going to face with their children when they're born. And if you think of a single parent, a mother, who has a genetically deformed child, that particular mother will feel guilty because she gave birth. She will feel guilty and she will be worried every single second of every single day for her life. She will worry that the child won't marry. If the child can marry, she'll worry that the children will carry the disease, which they will. She will worry when she dies who will take care of them. So you are condemning both the family and the children to a lifetime of absolute hell. And this is already published. It is available to look up. It's what I call intentional ignorance. They are offered some sort of incentive and they think, oh, this is going to be good, we'll have it. Now the problem is, imagine you are a 15-year-old schoolgirl. All of the 400,000 eggs in your ovaries were with you at birth. They're not fully developed, but they're with you. They are 10 times more susceptible to radiation than all of the other DNA in the body. And scientists don't realize that. They don't read all of the papers as I do. So you have this highly susceptible genetic material which is going to make your children. And you are irradiating it because Wi-Fi's, they are transmitters as well as the routers, as well as the ones either side of you. They are all transmitting at this height through your ovaries. So you are risking the damage, the DNA damage of your child every time you sit down and you use Wi-Fi. And it's like saying, if I smoke a cigarette, which one will cause the damage? The answer is I don't know. It could be the one today. So you now have a child that has a probability of being genetically damaged. But the real damage is when that child grows up, you have genetic material in your ovaries which could be damaged.
You know, I'd like to say too is, you know, let's just talk about what it would look like if you were to implement this turning it on and turning it off, turning it on only when you need it and off when you don't. And that what it's dependent on is the teacher remembering throughout the day, I have to turn this thing off. I have to turn it off when that, you know, I'm not using it. So, you know, amongst all their other work at school, they're having to break and remember to turn that thing off.
Good point.
And, you know, too, it can become very subjective where, you know, if a teacher doesn't believe it's really, you know, a biohazard and not a big deal, or it's okay if we just leave it on today because I don't feel like running back and forth to turn it on and turn it off, you know, then I don't do that, you know, that kind of thing. Or, you know, it's just so unique to whatever that environment is, whoever the teacher is, you know, it's dependent on things it should never be dependent on. And here, you know, here we are crafting legislation to try and limit it. Well, why are we doing that? Because there's an absence of public health policy on this. There's nothing whatsoever going. And it's people trying to step in to do something. Well, doing it halfway isn't going to do it. And there's going to be continued harm to the people involved and continued denial of basic human rights to be able to be, you know, in a healthy environment, which the expectation should always be there.